When a CEO's laughter echoes through the boardroom at his black intern's presentation, he never expects investors to demand her leadership. His mockery silences instantly when $20 million hangs in balance. Amara Johnson couldn't sleep the night before her first day. After 4 years of hard work, late-night studying, and turning down parties, she had finally made it. Her degree from Wilson University hung proudly on her wall. Computer science, with honors. Tomorrow she would walk through the glass doors of Vertex Technologies as their newest intern. She laid out her clothes carefully, a navy blue blazer, white button-up shirt, and black slacks. Professional, but not trying too hard. Amara wanted to make the right impression. This internship could change everything for her. Amara's tiny apartment sat on the edge of downtown. From her window, she could see the Vertex building, all glass and steel, reaching toward the sky. The company had made headlines for its work in data security. In just 5 years, they had grown from a small team working out of a garage to one of the most talked-about startups in the city. "You've got this," she told her reflection in the mirror, trying to calm the butterflies in her stomach. The Vertex office buzzed with energy. People moved quickly between glass-walled meeting rooms, talking excitedly about code and project deadlines. Amara noticed right away that she stood out. In a sea of white faces, mostly men in similar button-up shirts, she was the only black woman. "You must be the new cleaning staff," said a man walking past, not even looking at her properly. "Maintenance. Office is down the hall." "Actually, I'm Amara Johnson, the new software development intern," she said, forcing a smile while her cheeks burned. "Oh, sorry about that," he mumbled, walking away quickly. Richard Davenport's office took up the corner of the top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the entire city. His desk, a slab of polished concrete on metal legs, held 3 large computer monitors. "Amara, welcome to Vertex," Richard said, standing to shake her hand. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "We're happy to have you join us. Your professors spoke highly of your work." Richard was in his 40s with salt and pepper hair and the confident manner of someone used to being listened to. He had built Vertex from nothing, turning his college project into a multi-million-dollar company. "Thank you for the opportunity." "Mr. Davenport," Amara said, "I'm excited to learn and contribute to the team." "Richard, please," he said. "We're informal here. One big family." As he showed her around, Amara noticed how people straightened up when he walked by. They respected him, or maybe feared him a little. Her desk was in a corner, away from the main team. Unlike the others who had pictures and plants, hers was empty except for a company laptop. "Hey, you're the new intern, right?" Amara looked up to see a black man about 30 years old, wearing a Vertex IT badge. "Yes, Amara Johnson," she said, relieved to see a friendly face. "Marcus Washington, IT department." He lowered his voice. "Good to see another face that looks like mine around." "Here, are there not many of us?" Amara asked, though she already knew the answer. Marcus laughed softly. "You're looking at 50% of the black employee population at Vertex. Just you and me." Over the next few days, Amara noticed the small things. How people looked surprised when she spoke up in meetings. How they talked over her. How the team went to lunch without inviting her. "Did you see the email about the project brainstorm?" Marcus asked, when he stopped by to check on her computer setup. "What brainstorm?" Amara asked. "The new data security protocol. Big project. Could put Vertex on the map in a major way. They're looking for fresh ideas." Marcus shook his head. "You should have been included." That night, Amara pulled up her university thesis on her laptop. Her research had focused on a new approach to data security that used a different encryption method. Her professor had called it groundbreaking. The next morning, she took a deep breath and knocked on Richard's office door. "Mr. Davenport, Richard, I heard about the data security project," she said. "I'd like to join the team." Richard looked surprised. "That's a major project, Amara. We usually put seasoned developers on that kind of work. In college, I actually specialized in encryption methods. My thesis was on an approach that might be useful for exactly what you're trying to do." She handed him a printed copy of her abstract. As Richard skimmed it, his eyebrows raised slightly. "Interesting," he said finally. "The team meets tomorrow at 10. Don't be late." As she left his office, Amara felt a mix of triumph and fear. Later, Marcus caught her by the coffee machine. "Heard you got on the security project," he said. "That's impressive." "Thanks." "I'm nervous but excited." Marcus's face grew serious. "Just be careful. That team can be tough. They don't always welcome outsiders, especially ones who might be smarter than them." Amara nodded, understanding what he wasn't saying out loud. "I'll be careful," she promised. "But I'm not going to hide what I know. This is my chance to prove myself." As she walked back to her desk, Amara felt the weight of more than just a project on her shoulders. This was her chance to be seen, really seen, for her brilliance, not just the color of her skin. The project team met in the glass-walled conference room. 6 men in button-down shirts sat around the table, laptops open. Amara took a seat at the edge. "Everyone, this is our new intern," said Michael, the project lead. He didn't use her name. "Amara Johnson," she said, offering a smile. "I'm excited to work with you all." A few nods, then they moved on as if she hadn't spoken. For the next hour, Amara took careful notes as the team discussed the security challenge. The company needed a way to protect user data that was both strong and fast, something that wouldn't slow down their systems. When there was a pause, Amara raised her hand. "I have a thought about—" "Let's break for today," Michael announced, closing his laptop. "Todd and Chris, can you start working on the first code prototype?" Day after day, the pattern continued. In meetings, Amara would raise points only to be talked over. Once, she suggested a different approach to encryption, and the room fell, silent. "That won't work," said Todd flatly. 20 minutes later, Chris suggested the exact same idea. "That's brilliant," Michael said. "Let's explore that further." Amara bit her lip, her cheeks burning. Her actual assignments were basic: checking code for simple errors, writing documentation, getting coffee for team meetings. Nothing that used her real skills. At night, Amara worked in her tiny apartment, her laptop screen lighting up her face until 2 or 3 in the morning. She dug deeper into the security problem. She knew there was a better solution than what the team was building. "The problem is speed versus security," she explained to her empty room, working through her ideas out loud. "But what if we used a different structure entirely?" Richard called an all-hands meeting on a rainy Tuesday. "Big news, everyone," he announced, standing at the front of the packed room. "Next Level Capital is coming to visit next month. They're looking for their next big investment, and I want it to be us." A murmur ran through the crowd. Next Level was a major player in tech investment. "This could be our Series B funding," Richard continued. "I'm talking $20 million, but they want to see something special." He pointed to Michael. "The security project needs to be ready to demo. Make it happen." The pressure ramped up after that. The team worked later, the tension in the room thicker. Michael snapped at people over small mistakes. Richard stopped by nearly every day to check progress. "How's it coming?" he would ask, never looking directly at Amara. "On track, sir," Michael always answered, though Amara could see the worry in his eyes. Their solution was clunky. In testing, it slowed the system down by nearly 40%. The office was nearly empty when someone tapped on Amara's desk. She looked up to see a woman with short blonde hair and a sleek gray suit. "You're here late," the woman said. "Just finishing some things," Amara replied, quickly minimizing her screen. She had been working on her own solution, not the team's project. "I'm Zoe Parker, Product Management." She leaned against the desk. "You're the new intern, right? The one with the fancy degree?" Amara nodded. "I saw your thesis abstract on Richard's desk. Pretty impressive stuff." Zoe tilted her head. "Are they letting you contribute to the security project in a meaningful way?" Amara hesitated. "Not really." Zoe sighed. "Yeah, that sounds about right. This place can be." She trailed off, looking around. "Anyway, I've been watching. You're smart. Probably smarter than most of the team." "Thanks," Amara said, surprised by the sudden alliance. "Just be careful," Zoe warned. "Richard doesn't like being upstaged, especially by—" She didn't finish the sentence, but Amara understood. "I just want to do good work," Amara said. "Don't—" "We all?" Zoe straightened up. "Maybe save a copy of whatever you're working on, just in case." After Zoe left, Amara reopened her project. She stared at her code, doubt creeping in. Was she really good enough? Maybe the team was right to ignore her ideas. Maybe she was out of her league. She shook her head. No. She knew her solution was solid. The math worked. The early tests showed promise. She wasn't going to let their attitude make her doubt herself. A week before the investor meeting, Amara arrived early to find the team in crisis mode. "The latest test results are terrible," Chris was saying. "The system practically crawls." "When we apply the security protocol, we need to figure this out," Michael replied, running his hands through his hair. "Richard will kill us if we don't have something solid for next level." Amara took a deep breath and walked over. "I might have a solution." The room went quiet. "Let me guess," Todd said with a smirk. "You're going to save us all with your brilliant intern ideas." "Actually, yes," Amara said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I've been working on an alternative approach. It uses a different encryption method that's both secure and fast." Michael frowned. "We don't have time to explore new approaches this late in the game." "Just look at my test results," Amara insisted, pulling up the data on her laptop. "My method is 200% faster than what we're currently doing, and it's more secure." The team gathered around, faces skeptical. As they reviewed her numbers, their expressions shifted from doubt to surprise. "This actually looks promising," Chris admitted. "But we'd have to rewrite everything," Todd argued. "There's no time." Michael closed her laptop. "Thanks for the input, Amara, but we're sticking with our current path. We'll find a way to make it work." That night, Amara made a decision. She would prepare her own presentation for the investor meeting. It was a huge risk, but she was out of options. For the next week, she polished her solution during every free moment. She built a working demo. She practiced her presentation in front of her bathroom mirror, trying to sound confident and professional. "You can do this," she said in her reflection. But her hands shook anyway. The day of the investor meeting arrived. Vertex's main conference room had been transformed. Fresh flowers sat on the polished table, expensive water bottles with the company logo were placed at each seat. 5 people from Next Level Capital arrived, dressed in sleek suits. They shook hands with Richard and took their places at the table. Amara sat in the back row, her presentation loaded on her laptop. Her heart pounded so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. Richard welcomed everyone and gave a short speech about Vertex's vision. Then Michael took over, explaining the data security project. As he neared the end of his presentation, Amara noticed the investors looking unimpressed. One checked his watch. Another typed something on her phone. Our solution provides industry-standard security while maintaining acceptable system performance, Michael concluded. Any questions? Richard asked. Amara raised her hand. Now or never. Yes? Richard said, looking surprised. Sir, I'd like to present an alternative approach, if I may. Just 5 minutes. The room went silent. Richard's face tightened, but with the investors watching, he couldn't easily refuse. Of course, he said with a tight smile. Our interns are always enthusiastic. Please go ahead, Amara. Amara connected her laptop to the projector. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice came out clear and steady. The approach I've developed uses a dual-layer encryption system that splits the security process into parallel operations, she began. This means we can maintain complete data protection without sacrificing speed. She walked through her solution, explaining the technical aspects in simple terms. The investors leaned forward, their interest clearly growing. Halfway through, as she was showing her test results, Richard laughed. It was a short, dismissive sound that cut through the room. Quite imaginative, he said with a condescending smile. This is why we value our interns. They're not yet limited by practical realities. A few of the team members chuckled. Others looked at their laptops, uncomfortable. Perhaps in the real world, Richard continued, we need solutions that are actually feasible, not academic theories. Amara felt like she'd been slapped. Her face burned, but she forced herself to stand tall. These aren't theories, she said, her voice slightly shaky. I've built a working prototype. The test results are real. She continued her presentation, dignity intact despite the humiliation. When she finished, she thanked everyone for their time and returned to her seat. The room was silent for a moment. Then the lead investor, a woman with silver hair, leaned forward. That was quite impressive, she said, looking directly at Amara. I'd like to see more of that prototype. Eleanor Chen was not someone who wasted time. At 62, with 30 years in tech investment, she had seen countless pitches. She didn't impress easily. Ms. Johnson, could you explain how your system handles multiple access requests simultaneously? Ms. Chen asked, her sharp eyes focused entirely on Amara. The room was still. Richard shifted in his seat. Of course, Amara replied, returning to her laptop. The system uses what I call branch distribution, which splits incoming requests into parallel processing channels. She pulled up a diagram that showed the process in simple, colorful flows. Each request is encrypted separately, but processed at the same time. Think of it like multiple cashiers at a grocery store instead of just one line. Ms. Chen nodded. And what about security vulnerabilities? Traditional split processing often creates gaps. That's the key innovation, Amara said, her confidence growing. Each branch maintains a constant check with the others through a shared verification key. If any branch is compromised, the entire system locks down automatically. As Amara and Ms. Chen continued their technical exchange, the other investors began whispering among themselves. They looked impressed. Richard cleared his throat. I should mention that our entire team contributed to these concepts, even if they weren't part of our final approach. Ms. Chen barely glanced at him. Ms. Johnson, How long would implantation take with adequate resources? 3 months for full deployment. But we could have a working version in 6 weeks, Amara answered. A younger investor with rectangular glasses spoke up. I'm confused. If this solution is clearly superior, why isn't Ms. Johnson leading the project team? The question hung in the air. Richard's face flushed. Well, Amara is still an intern, he said with a tight smile. She's been with us for just a few weeks. The project is led by our senior developers, but I've been personally mentoring Amara, helping her develop her ideas. Amara's eyes widened at the lie, but she kept her expression neutral. Is that right? Ms. Chen asked, turning to Amara. The room went quiet. Everyone waited for her response. Mr. Davenport has certainly given me an opportunity to be part of Vertex, Amara said carefully. Ms. Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. She understood what Amara wasn't saying. Well, I've heard and seen enough, Ms. Chen announced, closing her portfolio. Next Level is prepared to offer Vertex the full $20 million in funding. Richard's face lit up. With one condition, Ms. Chen continued. Ms. Johnson will be named project lead for the security initiative, with appropriate compensation and authority. Richard's smile froze. I'm not sure that's non-negotiable, Ms. Chen interrupted. We invest in people as much as ideas, Mr. Davenport, and we're very interested in Ms. Johnson's potential. Half an hour after the investors left, Richard called an emergency meeting. His face was dark with anger as the team filed into the conference room. Amara sat in the corner, her heart pounding. Would someone like to explain what just happened? Richard asked, his voice dangerously quiet. No one spoke. We had a plan, he continued, a team approach that we all agreed on. Then suddenly our intern decides to go behind everyone's back with her own project. He turned to Amara. You deliberately undermined this team. You made us look divided and unprepared. Amara took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking, but her voice came out steady. I tried to contribute from day one, she said. I raised my hand in every meeting. I shared my ideas, which were either ignored or dismissed. When Chris presented the exact same concept I had suggested earlier, suddenly it was brilliant. That's not true, Todd protested, but his eyes wouldn't meet hers. It is true, Amara continued. I've been given coffee runs while the rest of you worked on the actual project. My ideas were shot down without consideration. And let's be honest about why. Richard's face hardened. If you're suggesting, I'm stating it plainly, Amara interrupted. I've been treated differently because I'm a black woman. The only question is whether it was conscious or unconscious bias. The room erupted in uncomfortable murmurs. That's a serious accusation, Richard said, and completely unfounded. We judge on merit alone at Vertex. Do you? It was Marcus, standing in the doorway. He walked into the room, placing a folder on the table. I've worked in IT here for 3 years. I've watched 5 black employees come and go, all of them leaving. Within 6 months, all of them report similar experiences to Amara's. He opened the folder. I've documented every instance. Emails showing black employees being left off meeting invites. Performance reviews with lower scores despite equal or better results. Promotion patterns that consistently favor white employees. Richard stared at the folder. You've been spying on company communications? That's grounds for immediate termination. It's not spying when it's my job to manage the email server, Marcus replied calmly. And these are patterns anyone could see if they bothered to look. I've seen it too. Everyone turned. Zoe stood up from her seat at the back. I've watched talented people get passed over, she said. I didn't speak up because I was protecting my own position. But that ends today. She looked at Amara. What happened to Ms. Johnson wasn't an isolated incident. It's a pattern. Richard's face had gone from red to white. This is ridiculous. I built this company from nothing. My vision, my work, my reputation are on the line every day. His voice rose. Now you want to hand control of our most important project to an intern based on some diversity guilt trip. Based on merit, Amara corrected. My solution works better. The investors saw that. They were caught up in the novelty, Richard snapped. They don't understand the technical realities like we do. Eleanor Chen has 3 patents in data security, Zoe pointed out. She understands perfectly. Richard looked around the room, seeing the shifting expressions. Some employees looked down, uncomfortable. Others met his gaze with new determination. He straightened his jacket. Let me make something very clear. This is still my company. I'm still the CEO. His voice was ice cold. Either I maintain full control over all projects and personnel decisions, or Vertex continues without me. It's that simple. 2 days later, the Vertex Board of Directors held an emergency meeting that lasted well into the night. By morning, they had made their decision. $20 million, said board member Janet Foster, looking directly at Richard. That's what Ms. Chen is offering, but only with Amara leading the security project. It's my company, Richard insisted, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of the table. It's our company now, Janet corrected gently. You sold 40% when you took the first round of funding, and we need this investment to survive. By afternoon, the company sent out a press release. Richard Davenport would be stepping back from day-to-day operations to focus on strategic vision. Amara Johnson would lead the security project. The company would review its hiring and promotion practices. Amara read the announcement on her phone, sitting alone in the break room. Her hands shook slightly. She felt both victorious and terrified. Yesterday, she was an intern nobody listened to. Today, she was responsible for the company's most important project. Congratulations. It was Marcus, holding 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to her. How does it feel? Overwhelming, she admitted. What if I fail? You won't, he said. Simply. But even if things get tough, remember, you earned this. Not because of some diversity initiative, because you're brilliant. Amara's first day as project lead was awkward. She walked into the conference room to find the team already seated. Some wouldn't meet her eyes. Todd sat with his arms crossed, clearly unhappy. Chris looked uncertain. Good morning, Amara said, trying to project confidence she didn't fully feel. I know this is a big change for all of us. I want to start by hearing your thoughts on where we stand with the project. Silence followed. Then Michael spoke up. Your security approach is solid, but we'll need to redesign the user interface to work with it. It was a simple statement, but also an olive branch. He was willing to work with her. Thank you, Michael, Amara said. Let's start there. Over the next hour, they slowly began to talk. By the end of the meeting, they had a plan. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. As people filed out, Todd lingered behind. I still think this is a mistake, he said. You don't have the experience. Amara met his gaze. You're right that I'm new to the industry. That's why I need experienced developers like you on the team. But I do know security encryption, and I have fresh perspectives that can help us. You don't have to like me, Todd, but I hope you'll work with me. He seemed surprised by her response. With a slight nod, he left the room. Over the next few weeks, Amara made changes to how the team worked. She started with simple things, making sure everyone had a chance to speak in meetings, creating an anonymous suggestion system, giving credit publicly when someone had a good idea. She worked longer hours than anyone else, learning the parts of the business she wasn't familiar with. Some nights, she went home exhausted and afraid. But each morning she returned determined. Zoe became a regular visitor to the project room. "The board is impressed," she told Amara one afternoon. "They didn't expect such quick progress." "The team is talented," Amara replied. "They just needed the right direction." A month into the project, they hit a roadblock. The security system worked well on the test server, but crashed when they tried to scale it up. Amara called a team meeting. "We need fresh ideas. Everyone, even the most junior person, gets 5 minutes to present their thoughts. No interruptions, no judgments." Todd rolled his eyes but took notes. New team members who had been quiet before spoke up. A junior developer named Miguel suggested combining elements from 2 different approaches. "That might work," Amara said. "Todd, what do you think about the technical side?" Todd looked surprised to be asked. He considered for a moment. It would need some significant adjustments to the code structure, but yeah, it could work. Together, they rebuilt the system using elements from multiple approaches. When they tested it again, it held. The security was solid, and the speed was better than they had hoped. "We did it," Chris said, sounding shocked as they watched the successful test. "We did it together," Amara corrected, smiling at the team. 6 months later, Amara stood in the same conference room where she had been humiliated. Now she was presenting the completed security system to Eleanor Chen and the other investors. "As you can see, the implementation has exceeded our initial projections," Amara explained, showing the performance metrics. "The system is already being used by our first 3 enterprise clients, with excellent feedback." Ms. Chen nodded approvingly. "Very impressive, Ms. Johnson. The board has authorized an additional $10 million in funding based on these results." Afterward, as the team celebrated with cake in the break room, Amara noticed a new face, a young black woman looking slightly overwhelmed. "You must be Danielle, the new programming intern," Amara said, walking over to introduce herself. "I'm Amara Johnson, security project lead." The young woman's eyes widened. "I know who you are. You're the reason I wanted to work here." "Welcome to the team," Amara said, feeling a wave of emotion. "Let me introduce you to everyone." The office looked different now. The team had expanded, with faces of different colors and backgrounds. People still worked hard, but the atmosphere was more collaborative. Not perfect, they still had a long way to go, but moving in the right direction. That evening, Amara was gathering her things to leave when Marcus knocked on her office door. Yes, she had an actual office now. "Have you seen this?" he asked, holding up his tablet. On the screen was an article from Tech Innovator magazine. "Vertex Technologies revolutionizes data security. Lead developer Amara Johnson's breakthrough approach." "They actually put my name on it," Amara whispered, taking the tablet. "Of course they did," Marcus said. "It's your work." After Marcus left, Amara sat in her quiet office, staring at the article. She thought about her journey, from being mistaken for cleaning staff to seeing her name in industry news. She picked up her phone and dialed. "Mom?" "It's me," she said when her mother answered. "Remember how scared I was on my first day? How did I call you crying after they mistook me for the janitor?" "I remember," her mother said. "I also remember telling you that you were too brilliant to be kept down for long." "You were right," Amara said, her voice catching. "Mom, they published an article about my work, about me." "Of course they did, baby," her mother replied. and Amara could hear the pride and tears in her voice. The world needed to see what I've always seen. Amara looked out her office window at the lights of the city below. There would be more challenges ahead. Change was slow, and progress wasn't always a straight line. But tonight, she would celebrate how far she had come. She had made her brilliance impossible to ignore.